Okay, well, hello, everybody, and thank you for bearing with us while we have figured out this off season of the NFL here. This is for the North. I am PJ. I'm here in Wisconsin,
I'm Chris. I'm here in Minnesota.
and we appreciate you as always tuning in. So we wanted to, before the season starts, before we hit the preseason, we wanted to, in a sense, break down the schedules of the Lions, the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings and discuss it mostly from the standpoint of what are our keys to victory for each of these teams. How are they going to have a successful season? So that boils down to about 3 or 4 points for each team. I'm going to handle the Lions and the Packers. Chris is going to handle the Bears and the Vikings, but we will have a couple of episodes lined up here where we're going to talk about and break down the schedule for each of the NFC North teams. So with that, you know,
I would say you're up here with the Lions. Tell me, what are their keys to victory for the season?
Absolutely. Well, so Lions are coming off of a season, as we are aware, that was a bit of a down year for them. Okay, so in 2025, there was a ton of attrition with the relationship between Dan Campbell and his coordinators, specifically the offensive coordinator, as well as the defensive coordinator. So ultimately, we're going into 2026. The Lions are going into 2026 with two brand new coordinators on the offensive and defensive side. So in 2026, Drew Petzing and defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard are going to be the new kind of steering. They will be the new steerage for the offense and defense here. But as I said, what caused a ton of strife in 2025 was the kind of eventual deterioration of that relationship between the former offensive coordinator and Dan Campbell. Like, we saw it throughout the year, and we discussed this, how Dan Campbell eventually lost that kind of lost the respect of his coaching staff, of his players, and ultimately the wheels fell off of the car here, and that led to a last place finish for the Lions in the NFC North and missing the playoffs for the first time in a few years. So, new coordinator.
And honestly, you could tell too just by how disorganized that offense looked last year. From my perspective, I was looking at it and I was like, it just seems like there's a child saying, "Oh, I want to do things my way, me. This is how we're going to do it. If you don't like it, well, too bad." Didn't want to take any input from anyone else. And PJ, to be a head coach, you simply just cannot do that. You need to work well with others. That needs to be on your resume. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would. I think, like, you to be a successful head coach, specifically in the NFL or at any professional sports level, right? I think you need to have a high degree of people skills, right? Be able to navigate a lot of different types of relationships and be able to be a very big picture kind of person and be able to kind of get all the trains moving in the right direction. And Dan Campbell, when he had Ben Johnson for a couple of years, was very good at that. He was able to take a step back and not have to deal with the nuts and bolts of everything, right? Because, looking through this, right, a multi-year look at the offensive ranking for the for the Lions in 2023, 2024, 2025, they ranked top 5 in basically every offensive statistical category that you could have. In 2023 and 2024, those were Ben Johnson years. They ranked second and first in 20. It was 33.2 points a game in 2024 and almost 410 yards a game. That ranked second in the NFL, first for points per game in the NFL in 2024, and they were third in yards per game at 395 in 2023 and fifth with 27.1 points per game. Now we're talking about Ben Johnson, right? So what was established under Ben Johnson when there was this fantastic relationship between Dan Campbell, his coordinator Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn, his defensive coordinator, they were a well-oiled machine, and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, thank you, and Jared Goff. It was a well-oiled, well-functioning machine. Okay, 2025, fifth in statistical categories for yards per game at 374, roughly, and about 25 points per game. Okay, so that's still a very respectable, very good offense. However, as the year went on, we saw it deteriorate, and the offensive production would dip, right? It would have these extreme peaks and valleys. Take for example 1 week, the Lions are playing great. They're talking about contending for the division, and the next week they go into Minnesota and they can't manage to score more than about 10 points. So, I think my first big key to this year is going to be Dan Campbell getting this coaching hire, both of these coaching hires, an offensive and defensive coordinator, correct, and building a relationship early on to be able to have this get back to the well-oiled machine that it was in 2023 and 2024, right? When we were talking about the Lions as a Super Bowl contender, because they certainly have the tools to do that. I think the big thing for me, priority number one, is Ben Johnson needs to get this relationship correct and gain back the trust and the respect of the locker room, as well as his assistant coaches and his coordinators. So
just as a correction for and again, we're both very tired as we do this because we both lead busy lives and we're working professionals, and one of us is a parent. You meant Dan Campbell, not Ben Johnson.
Thank you.
Mistake, because they were both part of the Lions organization at one point. I've done worse.
They were. I flip flopped those two, but yes, Dan Campbell, the coach of the Lions, needs to get this correct and have a good relationship with his offensive and defensive coordinators, which would be Drew Petzing and Kelvin Shepard. All right, so that is key number one to me for the Lions to be successful this year. Key number two, all right, a big thing that we're going into the 2026 season with is a revamped offensive line and running back room for the Detroit Lions. Okay, so that's on the offensive side of it. On the defensive side of the ball, you dealt with a ton of injury problems last year. So the rushing defense, the pass defense suffered great losses throughout the year, and they weren't really able to get a foothold on being a dominant defense, which, mind you, they have not really ever been. Outside of 2024, they were not really a dominant defensive unit before that, okay? But the big thing for me is what sort of contributions are we going to get from the new acquisition in Isaiah Pacheco, right? Because obviously David Montgomery walks in free agency. He goes to the Houston Texans. So you lose one half of that running back tandem that made them so explosive in 2023, 2024, and even 2025, correct? Because even when there were peaks and valleys last year, they still had a phenomenal offense, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery are phenomenal backs. But Isaiah Pacheco and Jahmyr Gibbs are now going to be the complement backs to one another. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the running back 1. Isaiah Pacheco is the running back 2. You're also dealing with, on the offensive side of the ball this year, a rebuilt offensive line. You had a couple of free agency losses. You had acquisitions that you made to try and fill those holes. But ultimately, you are adding new players to a new team culture and trying to make this roster gel as one and be successful. When Detroit has been their best, ultimately we know that is because they are running behind an offensive line that is dominant and gives Jared Goff time to throw and makes those running backs look phenomenal. They open up lanes. They're able to make plays in open field, between the tackles, off tackle, however they choose to run the ball or pass the ball. They, because of their offensive line in the past, have been able to get downfield, make explosive plays happen. All right? So I think a big key to me is, how is this new offensive line going to look? Can you get them to gel relatively quickly, right? I think, to me, always the first part of the year, the September games are kind of testing the waters, and certainly you can't lose your season. You can't derail it completely in September, but you want to get a quick foothold, and by game 2, game 3 of this, you want to have this figured out. Realistically, like when you're looking at it, offensive production-wise, they've really led the league offensively from a passing standpoint, from a rushing standpoint, all right? 4,600 passing yards in 2023, 2024. A quarterback rating of, 111.8 from Jared Goff in 2024, 105.5 in 2025. So, again, I talk about the fact that the Lions have the tools to be successful. They have the offensive skill players in Jahmyr Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff is a phenomenal quarterback, one of the probably top 10, top 5 quarterbacks that you would want in this league. Rushing statistics have been fantastic. So, big key for me is, how is this going to work? How does everybody gel together? On the defensive side, health is my big thing. If that defense stays healthy, I think they have the potential to be a top 20 unit. I think they need. I would like to see the Lions get into that tier of top 15, top 10. All right. But that's all going to depend really on how the new coordinator looks, how he implements his scheme. So health, to me, for the defense is going to be that other big key. That's the other side of this coin here. Offense and defense. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. I just spit a lot of information at you. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Chris.
No, I don't have anything to add. Just all of it, you mentioned it perfectly. All of it starts with the chemistry between the coaching staff, and hopefully they can keep it, hopefully for Lions fans at least, they can keep it together this year and all play nice in the sandbox type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, my final thing that I do want to mention is that because the Lions finished last place, they do get to take advantage, or should be able to take advantage, of one of the easier schedules in the NFL. They actually have the 6th easiest strength of schedule, in the NFL. Okay, so that's based off of the opponents that they're playing, right? So instead of having to play opponents like you're not playing the 49ers, right? You don't have to play the Rams. You don't have to go ahead and try and figure out beating the Super Bowl, the defending Super Bowl champion, right? they can take advantage. I think there are spots in this schedule, either early on or later on into it, where they can take advantage of this schedule and find some wins and be able to be a competitive team in the NFC North. Now, that's a big if, right? Like, we're right now speculating about things that have not happened. We haven't even seen a preseason game, and we don't really know what the roster looks like right now. But what I can tell you is, as a last place finishing team, you get the benefit of an easier schedule in the end of it all. So I think that's another, I'm going to put that as my third key to them being successful this year. Take advantage of the easier schedule and find wins where you can that are going to be a little bit easier to get against these non-powerhouse teams. So those are my three keys, and we'll probably add to that and tweak it a bit as we go down the road and get closer to the season and start to see games and see how this unfolds. But that, as of right now, are my keys to victory for the Lions.
Yeah, well, thank you, PJ. So, I have the Bears, 4 things to make or break their season.
Okay.
So, starting off with number 1, the interior O-line. They had an improved O-line from previous years. Granted, coming off an quote-unquote easier schedule, I would say. They had some tough games along with a mix of, let's put it this way. For at least 8 games, yeah, I'm doing that right. 8 games in the NFC North, you do not have an easy game.
No.
All the teams there were competitive. All had similar wins and losses. It's highly competitive here. So let me start off with that. So they came off the O-line, interior O-line, finished 3rd overall in the Power Football rankings last season.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest concern is the center situation, as Drew Dahlman declared retirement, surprising many. Shortly after the season came to a close, along with a key injury to Ozzy Trapillo that could cause a huge disruptions in the effective unit, which was the Bears' interior offensive line, and allow Caleb Williams to have more pressure against him, especially with a stronger schedule. And I would say one of my most concerning fact was that is that if I look at it, I look at when Caleb Williams was being pressured, he wasn't being pressured head on. He was being pressured from the side. So he had that time he could step into the pocket, just wait, boom, 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 make all his reads, and then throw to the guy that was open. I mean, it sounds elementary, but when you have the time to do that, to make all your reads, it makes it much easier for the quarterback to come up with those simple plays along with the bigger plays later on. And I will talk more about Caleb Williams' playmaking in a minute, but we will be watching on how they address the interior O-line and who they're going to bring in and who will be starting.
Yeah, because they drafted in round 2 Logan Jones, who was the center out of Iowa, right, to kind of fulfill that need at center. Am I correct? That's at least the expectation?
You know what? I think that was one of the best situations that could have fallen their way. However, the level of football in the NFL compared to college is leaps and bounds beyond.
Yeah.
So we will see how Logan Jones. So I think he will do a serviceable job. I don't know in his rookie year if he will be immaculate.
Yeah, I think center specifically, in terms of interior offensive lineman position, is one of the hardest to step into as a rookie, right? I think you are expected effectively as the center to be the captain of that line, to be able to kind of steer the ship in the right direction and call out the protections, and it also, there's a lot to that goes into that relationship between a center and a quarterback, right? So
that's what I was going to say, the timing and everything, especially on hurry up offense.
Yeah.
So we will be monitoring that situation pretty closely. Moving on, consistent number 2, consistency from Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great season last year.
Yep.
Especially when it came to making highlight reel plays in key moments to win games. However, he struggled in trying to force plays and taking what the defense gave him.
Yeah.
This will really be important in big games. I mean, we saw when they played the Rams, all they needed was a field goal to win the game, and Caleb forced the ball into double coverage, not unlike a previous Packers QB, where the Rams got an interception and drove down the field and kicked a field goal to win it.
Yeah.
If they want to win big games in the postseason, Caleb needs to play smart. And I think he will get smarter as he has conversations with Ben Johnson on his current format going into the 2026 season. It's just something that is a learning curve for a lot of young guys. I mean, Caleb Williams is going into year 3, so I think he will mature as a player. Yep. I think he has to mature as a player. He won't have any choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he doesn't, with the tougher strength of schedule, the Bears will not be the same football team you saw last year.
No, I think that's like I really like what you said there about taking what the defense gives Caleb Williams. I think it's all well and good to be able to have the athletic talent and the ability to be able to extend plays and to be able to create when everything is falling apart. But that in itself is not a reliable offensive system. That is not how you should run your offense, or it's not something that you can necessarily count on, right? I think, like you said, Caleb Williams had some phenomenal highlight reel throws, all-time great moments where you just scratch your head and you go, how the heck does he even make that play, or how does he even find that guy out of all of that chaos?
How does he get out of, certain situations where he almost got sacked many times? He was wonderful to watch last year, and I don't think I'm minimizing his impact. I think one of the things moving forward is just a fact. When you walk into an NFL game, you have to be able to walk through it a little bit. You cannot rush to the finish line because you have the same time on the field as any other day. Yep. Unless you go into overtime, which is a completely different situation. But for regulation time, you have the same time on the field.
Yeah.
Every time. You have to use your time wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will get into my next point. Number 3. Hopefully for Bears fans, the running game holds up.
Mm-hmm.
This will be key to controlling the clock this season, and it was what helped the Bears win a lot of games last year.
Yeah.
Their run game reminds us that every run doesn't need to be a huge play. They average 4.9 yards per carry.
Which is phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But instead they proved that if you can get 4 to 6 yard runs consistently against good teams, you can control the clock, slow the game down, and really play the game on your own terms versus trying to rush through it where your guys may get winded on offense or defense, and then ultimately that will not bode well for you. Because I've seen it too where like offenses try to go down the field. I mean, you and I have both seen it on our respective teams where offenses try to go down the field. They don't really take their time. They get that turnover, they get that quick score, and too many of those leads to some of those big guys on defense getting winded, and then all of a sudden it's turning the score is turning the other way, and you're like, you're frustrated, and it's Yeah, it's not a good situation for anyone.
Well, sometimes, as we have pointed out, both of us can point this out. Sometimes your best defense is offense, like keeping your offense on the field, long sustained drives that keep the other team off of the field and get that other team's defense gassed can certainly be a really good recipe for success. And biting off chunks of 4 to 6 yards at a time is phenomenal. That grinds clock so much quicker than the big explosive plays. And yes, the big explosive plays are flashy, and you need them to win games. I think you need a combination of both. A running game that can consistently get those 4 to 6 yard chunks, plus the explosive plays when it's necessary, when the timing is right. Do you think, though, that there's a little bit in Ben Johnson's nature, especially as he's going to be a second-year head coach now, right? I think there's I see a little bit of this tendency for Ben Johnson to showboat a little bit, right? Like when things start to look comfortable, he pulls out something flashy, or he'll roll the dice on a fourth down call because he's trying to get more points. I just see it as the style of Ben Johnson when he was in Detroit was this kind of these big bold choices, these explosive plays, this flashy offense where there's a lot of tricks and gadgets and movement. I think it was tamed down a little bit, but I think there were moments where you saw Ben Johnson roll the dice and it didn't pay off for him in this past year. So I think there's that little bit of him that still wants to showboat a little bit and be flashy and roll the dice, if that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yeah, his play style has been very aggressive over the last 2 years. I believe, once again, taking what the defense gives you. If there is an easy field goal try at the beginning of the game, you should take it. Yeah. 100%. Even if it's 4th and 1 in the red zone. There is no guarantee. I mean, there's no guarantee on anything, right?
Yeah.
But the likelihood of you winning the game if you score first, I would assume, because I haven't looked at stats on this, so don't quote me on this, but I would assume it would give your team a little bit of a confidence boost to go throughout the game and play your game.
Yeah.
I would save the 4th and 1s, the 4th and 2s, or even like a 4th and 7, like surprise play, for later in the game.
Right. When to me is if you absolutely in an end of game gotta have it situation, if you need to go for it on 4th down, then yes, you go for it on 4th down in that situation. You're in the red zone and a touchdown is going to win it instead of, a touchdown is going to put you in the lead and give you a better chance to win versus kicking a field goal for a tie game, then yes, by all means, go for that, right? And the other side of that coin is that if you gamble and you go for it and you don't get it, yeah, okay, you turn over the ball, but, I think, coaches kind of live and die by this now, this analytics of like, when do I go for it? When do I kick a field goal? When do I punt it? And I think they're so just crippled by, this indecision with analytics right now. So, but, take what the defense gives you. By all means, I think I like what you said there. There's don't quote you on the statistics, but generally if you score first in the game, that gives you a confidence boost. Momentum is a thing in any sort of sporting event. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, or at least trying to keep a cool head too, because you could score. So let's say I go down the field, I score 3.
Yeah.
If the other team, even if the other team scores a touchdown, I have the chance to get 7 points the next drive, and then I'm up 10-7.
Right.
So I think you try to, at least early on in the game, take the points where they're given.
Mm-hmm.
That was frustrating about watching Ben Johnson last year, because I saw so much potential for that Bears team.
Yeah.
I also saw, and then going back to it, also seeing Caleb Williams force the ball to receivers that were in double coverage, and it worked about half the time.
Yeah.
Which is fine in certain situations if you really need it. So that being said, what I'm leading to, I am concerned that if the run game holds up, that the pass game doesn't hold up. If the run game doesn't hold up,
mm-hmm.
that the pass game without DJ Moore is going to struggle.
Yeah.
Because Caleb Williams needs to know when to make the smart throw, going back to point number 2, when to make that short, safe throw, even if it's a dink and dunk to your tight end. Honestly, that can help make or break games. How many times have you and I played Madden, and then I have sent, receivers just on those short little routes, and you're like, wait, I was more focused on the long ball. It's like,
yeah,
it's like Madden, but there's actual stakes on the line.
Yeah. Like a 10-yard out route can be completely devastating, and you can just throw them, pop down the field really easily, and it works, right? Like, there are times, yes, when you need to bite off larger chunks of yardage, right, and get explosive plays. But there is nothing wrong with the dink and dunk offensive system. It works. There are plenty of quarterbacks that did not have as talented of rosters as the Bears did last year that managed to succeed with that model. So I don't know. I don't know if it's like this just belief that the Bears are trying to be like better than they think they are, or they're just kind of, it's almost like a punching above their weight thing sometimes, where they're just like, oh, well, we really have to go for it here. We have to get the explosive play 50-yard touchdown right now. And it's like, well,
right, and it just isn't going to work versus a bigger team. No, those better teams. But that's why their run game needs to hold up this season. They need to figure out the O-line, and like I said, Caleb Williams needs to play effective, and that's the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Let's go with number 4. My final point for tonight. The secondary needs to play more consistently versus good teams, especially versus good teams. The Bears' defense was really exciting to watch last year, as they managed to win a lot of close games for them. Not unlike the Vikings team the year before, that was really exciting to watch for a lot of us, even non-Vikings fans tuning in. And so they got some key takeaways at the end of some thrillers last year. I would like to see better secondary coverage, as they consistently struggled in that department, allowing receivers to get open after roughly 2.5 seconds or less. This affects the defensive line as well by not allowing them to get to the quarterback, and that could translate into them getting more 3-and-outs by forcing the second or third and long plays that are much harder to convert, which would essentially, or hopefully for Bears fans, lead to much more 3-and-outs.
Yeah.
I like the addition of Brian at safety, and we will see if the draft pick Steinman can wreak havoc by not allowing the receivers to run free.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, there's kind of, to to build on that a little bit, I think it was a two-tiered problem last year, right? Is A, the Bears did not have a particularly good secondary, all right? The other problem that compounded that issue and highlighted that issue was that the Bears did not generate a ton of traditional in the trenches pass rush. Their defensive line did not have, so to speak, a big superstar that was wreaking havoc and getting after the quarterback.
But to argue against that point, like, how can you when you have only 2.5 seconds? Like, I look at it. So if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at how much time it would take the quarterback to release the ball. So hike, back up, that's 1 second. Look down the field, 1, 2, 3, that's 2 seconds. And then the ball can be out of your hand in 3 seconds. Like, I would say that's pretty standard for a lot. But for a lot of NFL quarterbacks, 3 seconds or less. But you can't allow these wide receivers to run free, because if you allow them open room, open space, the quarterback, again, it sounds elementary. The quarterback will find the right receiver. They will have someone open.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, they might get hit. But at the same time, like, they're going to complete those passes over and over and over and make your defense pay. And if they can do those short to medium passes that we were talking about earlier, that's going to wear your defense down.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you're faced with a situation, again, like what we talked about earlier, where your defense is gassed.
Yep.
You are not able to perform as well as the game goes on. And then the game may come down to the wire. And if you're gassed at that point, well, tough luck. Like, you got to find a way to win. But at the same time, it's much harder to.
Yep.
If your team has been attacked by a smart coach play after play after play.
Yeah. Yeah, there are plenty of examples of coaches that are going to be able to exploit a defense that is allowing wide receivers and tight ends to run free, right? So, like, you got to do something to address that. I would certainly agree, and I think the other kind of piece for me that I see is I would love to see this Bears defense become less turnover dependent, right? I think in 2025 they had like you said, a thrilling defense, right? And that was in part because they were getting turnovers at such a high rate. They were very opportunistic. They swarmed to the ball, and yes, they played strong, solid defense. But there were these moments where you're like watching these games, close games, very close games, where you're like, they really need a turnover. Like that's good. That could flip the script on it. And it just didn't happen. And when those turnovers didn't happen, those were the games where the Bears, specifically their defense, struggled, right? They were getting sliced and diced. Heck, go back to the game against the 49ers. That there was not a lick of defense in that. Both the 49ers and the Bears defense was getting sliced and diced up and down the field, and neither team could buy a turnover. And it really just came down to, okay, whoever has the ball at the end of this game and manages to kick a field goal, like if one team can manage to get a stop and force the other team to kick a field goal, they're probably going to win this game in the end of it all, because it was. Yeah,
granted, that was a fun game to watch.
It was super fun.
It was kind of like the Dallas Green Bay game, where it was all offense, no defense. But sometimes if it's an exciting defense, like if there are exciting defensive plays too, like that can be fun to watch as well. Anyway, before we get too out into the weeds, I would argue and it's fine that it happened this way.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that their high turnover rate was due to their strength of schedule.
Yeah, I would say that and agree with that too. That they were playing lesser competition, right? And I'm gonna not really be surprised when the Bears probably run into a tougher stretch on this year's schedule. Like they're playing a first place schedule instead of a last place schedule. That's going to be a big difference. Like and you could have added it as a a thing, but I think it's kind of obvious there, right? That they're going to get a harder schedule because they finished first place instead of.
Well, that's the hard thing too. There's about 100 different things I could have mentioned with this Bears team. I like the direction that they're heading. This is the final thing I'll say on them. I like the direction they're heading. If I'm a Bears fan, I have reason to be excited and cautiously optimistic moving forward with a consistent coach in Ben Johnson as he evolves his game plan moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree with that sentiment. They're one of the teams in the NFC North that gives me reason to be excited if I'm a fan of that team. I'm not, but that there's certainly reason for Bears fans to be excited. But we'll talk about that other team that we should be really excited about on the next episode. So more to come.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been For the North. Down below, you can, if you like the content, you can like and subscribe and leave a comment. Say hello. We'd like to see where you're listening from. Yeah. And once again, I'm Chris in Minnesota, and we have
PJ here in Wisconsin.
This has been For the North. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you. Peace out.